Okay, we're back with part two of our conversation with Gene Meyer, Dan Schmidt, and I, co-editors of the Giving Review, 2 of 3. And Dan has a question following up on what we were talking about at the end of part 1.
Yes, Gene, if we could have you comment, if you would like, on the quality of students. Again, the Federalist Society has been fortunately in activity for a number of years now. And so you've seen many students come through, gone on to be professionals, and then engage both in practice along with the battle of ideas. What's the Federalist Society sense, your sense of the quality of student that's coming up? And I raise this because of the COVID inspired now, but really a long discussion of K-12 and into undergraduate education in terms of preparation for whatever they may go into, medicine, into law, going for PhD, whatever the case may be. What's your sense about that in terms of the battle of ideas and the remedial work that might need to be done once they get into an active student chapter or then on to professional chapters, Gene?
It's mixed. Our best students seem to me to be, if anything, better than they've ever been, which has surprised me. But I will also say that there are 2 other things that are of interest in that. One is we have quite a few students who are not particularly solid conservatives or libertarians. They're just want to have serious discussion of ideas and say there's nowhere else I can find it. Now, I think a lot of those we may get during the course of time to be more sympathetic than they currently are. But I am definitely very concerned about what the pipeline looks like. I'm surprised, as I say, there haven't been more problems so far. I think it's just that there's I think we're getting a lot of good people, some of the good people we have, a lot of them do go into law, which may not even be that valuable a thing on balance compared to some of the other things they could do. It's hard to say, but it definitely helps us institutionally. I just don't see, I mean, this isn't my area of expertise, but I don't see how some of what's going on in the schools is not going to be, reduce the strength of the pool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, from the quality of the students to the quality of conservatism in its current form, what do you think, Gene? What's going on, including with fusionism, with which I know you have a lot of familiarity?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll take the fusionism part first because I've heard some discussions of that and some discussions of that was all very well to try to combine sort of the more libertarian and more traditional sides of the conservative movement when there was communism, but without communism, it doesn't really work very well. And I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of at least my father's ideas, which is what the fusionism part comes from, and he never actually used the term. But the important idea is that Western civilization, which is really on balance the best human beings have done for governance, is based on 2 key elements: the importance of the freedom of the individual and the importance of what might be called, broadly speaking, traditional values, which would include religion, would include respect for the past, and respect for the structures of society. And those things are not only, I think, important, I think it's hard to imagine a time when they aren't going to be important or central. Both things are deeply a part of the human experience and what makes people effective. And both they're not fused, but they are both dependent on each other to a significant degree. It's hard to see a free society working as well as one might like without some decent foundation in morality, in the old verities, truth, beauty, justice, etc. And it's hard to see a society that's not free, fundamentally free, being able to sustain those ideas for a long time either. And I think when we have the discussion of fusionism, it's often misses that point. The question is, can you get these people to be allied? And my starting point would be, what do they believe? And if they share either of these 2 fundamental principles, I think you can explain why the other principle ought to matter to them, at least to some degree. So that would be on fusionism. And
What should conservative philanthropy do to help there, if anything? If it can.
I'm sorry?
If it can.
If it can. Well, I mean, one of the problems with philanthropy, of course, there are a lot of things it can't do at the end of the day. But I do think it should be alert to funding those ideas and discussions of those ideas and examination of them, an organization that promotes them where it can and where it sees them. I also think it should be prepared to help counter the attacks on such ideas. In other words, the conservative philanthropy should both be, not super friendly to ideas questioning too far the role of freedom, or the ideas questioning too far the idea there's some moral foundation needed in society. Doesn't mean they can't support debates on those areas, but that's the general thing. I don't know there's a specific thing. I do think on the legal conservatism point of view, and what we go from here, it is pretty important that we do have a serious discussion of and understanding of those principles of the importance of freedom and the importance of what I'm calling traditional values. I think there's a better phrase for that. I don't know exactly what it is, because it is on that which we those principles we use to support the civilization that's enabled a wonderful country to build up, in many ways probably the most successful in human history. And it's those roots that are being attacked and challenged. So it's important to work on that. And the legal roots are a key part of that. And I think it's, for the Federalist Society, and some of this is sort of my own views, but for the Federalist Society, those roots are, those legal roots are critical, and they are neutral in a political sense, but they are far from neutral in a successive society sense. So,
are there some components of conservatism currently that are going too far in questioning either freedom, maybe free markets, or traditional values? There's a lot of hurly-burly going on now, and I know you like debate, and that's a good thing, but is it too hurly-burly?
Well, I think I do like debate, and I think anytime you have a challenge to any set of ideas, the response shouldn't be, how do I squelch that? The response should be, this is a chance to explain more clearly what we think, because that way we can not only have people who are persuaded of the ideas, but are armed to, explain them to others. We're not going to be around forever, and you have to, what Reagan's line, freedom's only basically one generation from extinction, or something to that effect. So you should be welcoming that. We have a tremendous opportunity in that much of the left, certainly almost all the far left, has become hostile to freedom of speech and even freedom of thought. I mean, we've got a whole project we're developing on freedom of thought, because and I say freedom of thought because freedom of speech is what the authoritarians go after. Freedom of thought is what the totalitarians go after. And so much of the effort is not only to say you can't say something, but essentially to the degree they can, you can't even think it. I think a lot of very good, decent people, a lot of the young instinctively will rebel against that. I think the roots are still strong enough in this country that they will rebel against that very strongly in one way or another. But we have to foster in every way we can those reactions. And I think even the discussion within the more conservative libertarian side can help foster that.
Mm-hmm. Just to finish up, then let you, the Federalist Society institutionally might be subject to some reaction from those who would want to limit your ability, I guess, to speak or think. What if there's going to be investigations of funding flows and so forth? What would you say to someone who says, this is all great, you're talking about ideas and so forth, but things were too political from you and your allies in legal conservatism? What should and will the response be I'm thinking of Senator Whitehouse.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, Senator White, yeah, right. I mean, there could be attempts to do all kinds of things politically. There's some, question, there's always the question of if people you're closely involved with in some way or other have both political success and political power. It affects the brand of the organization a bit. And what we've actually spent our money on, spent our resources on, and what we've actually done is the sort of things we always talk about: the debate, the discussion, the chapters on campus, the chapters around the country, the conventions. But there are people involved with us who have done a lot of things, many of which I think are very good, but they're not ours. I mean I don't mean they're not ours in the sense of not connected with us as an organization, but they're not ours in terms of that's not officially what we do. What we do is the debate and discussion of ideas and the promotion of the core principles: limited government, separation of powers, rule of law, to a large degree originalism, etc.
Yeah. Is this all more like chess or checkers or Uno or what? How is your life like chess?
I think my old professor, who took a course from Michael Oakeshott in London, and his number one disciple taught the course. And I remember they have a variety of things. They say you can't apply X, Y, and Z. And I said to him, "What do you learn from all this?" And he said, "Prudence."
All right. Okay.
And I think there's a lot to that. I think you learn from a lot of things, but in my case, chess, you do learn some degree of patience, not being overly impulsive, thinking ahead. So it contributes to that, but many things contribute to that. But it's probably where I've gotten a lot of that.
Dan, can you tell Gene how this is really all more like hockey?
Well, certainly as we began the discussion, in his reference of the transactional that has inflicted a lot of areas of our life, including philanthropy, conservative or liberal, but certainly conservative as well. The long term, the prudence, wisdom, the natural sort of things that people, and hence my question about young people coming up. Because some of that, for a variety of reasons, not just sort of educational reasons, but social, that sort of focus on those kinds of living life with those virtues to develop and be developed by others is really sort of where the Federalist Society started in terms of talking about debate. There was a practical matter: get more students, look at the courts. So there was a transactional. But as Gene referenced the Federalist Society, and it's early, and thanks to Gene and his background and some of the leaders, the founders of the Federalist Society, I think many of them probably would answer that question if they had Oakeshott or his primary student teaching you. A person like that say that really when you look at that without that baseline, you can get off the track very quickly, whether that's in political sense or in a social sense, or most importantly in a personal sense with yourself and your family and your community. So for the Bradley Foundation, I know, and others who have supported the Federalist Society led by Gene and his cohort of real professionals, it's performed a service, I think, way beyond, and will be judged so in the years ahead, way beyond sort of training people to debate and with all those skills, but really keeping in mind the things he just mentioned with respect to his own education in his earlier days. So that would be my response to Gene's response to your question, Mike.
Appreciate that, and it's definitely been true. We've been fortunate and blessed to have a good board and good leaders who have bought into essentially what we're trying to do, because there's always pressure to be more, just as with fundamental, always foundations. There's always pressure to, well, yeah, I know you don't usually take positions, but surely you'll take a position on this. And that's been one key for us. It's enabled us to have a wide range of people involved, but also to get a lot of people who don't agree with us involved in discussion, because we're not a position-taking organization, and people by now know that.
Well, gosh, thanks so much for doing this with us, Gene. If we have any Giving Review refrigerator magnets left, we'll get them off in the mail to you. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you.